Picture two people. Same city, same Monday morning, same alarm going off at 6:47 a.m. The first person wakes up and the very first thought in their head, before coffee, before anything, is money. Not because something amazing happened, but because something always could go wrong. They know their account balance without checking. They know the bill due dates like they know their own birthday. They get dressed, they sit down on that 9 a.m. Teams call with the camera on and a smile plastered on their face, not because they want to be there, but because they have to be, because the rent is due, because the car payment doesn't care how they feel today. The second person wakes up on that same Monday. They also check their phone, but they're checking the weather. They make their coffee slowly. Maybe they go for a walk first. Maybe they don't check their email until noon. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't care about money, but because money is no longer the invisible hand controlling every single decision they make. That difference, right there, that's what financial freedom actually feels like. My name is Daniel, and today we're going to talk about this honestly. Not the highlight reel version, not the beach with a laptop fantasy. We're going to look at what financial captivity actually costs you, what the math really looks like, and what it feels like on the other side when you finally get there. Let's get into it. Most people living in financial stress don't realize how deep they're in because it's not a dramatic crisis. It's quiet. It's a slow drip. And from the outside, it can look like success. Let me show you with a real example. Meet a couple. Let's call them the Rahibs, two working professionals. She's in marketing, earning $65,000 a year. He's in operations, pulling in $72,000. Combined income, $137,000 a year. On paper, that's genuinely upper middle class. That's a good life. That's you should be fine territory. So why aren't they? After federal taxes, provincial taxes, payroll deductions, and a modest retirement contribution, they're actually taking home around $7,900 a month. That's their real money. They bought a home 2 years ago, $380,000, which felt like the responsible move compared to what their friends were spending. Mortgage payment, $2,200. Property taxes, $420 a month. Home insurance, $160. And then the furnace died in February, as furnaces do, and now they're on a payment plan for that at $90 a month. Total housing cost, $2,870. That's already 36% of their take-home, and they haven't left the house. 2 cars, because nothing is walkable where they live. Car payments combined, $580. Insurance, $290. Fuel, because both of them commute, $310. Total transportation, $1,180. Running total, $4,050 gone. They have $3,850 left for everything else in their lives. Student loans, because the jobs that qualify you for the mortgage require the degrees, $540 combined a month. Health and dental premiums not fully covered by employers, $360. Groceries for 2 adults eating like actual adults, $720. Utilities, electricity, gas, internet, 2 phones, $390. Now they have $1,840 left, and we haven't talked about clothing. Car maintenance, because one of those cars has a light on the dashboard that's been lit up since October. The 1% annual home maintenance rule, which is real and will happen whether they budget for it or not. The birthday dinner they couldn't get out of, the school fundraiser, the prescription, the tire. This household earns $137,000 a year and has realistically $1,200 to $1,500 left over per month before any emergency, before any real savings. They are not irresponsible. They made sensible decisions at every single step, and they arrived at a life where one unexpected expense is a credit card and one job loss is a genuine crisis. That is financial captivity. And here's what makes it so insidious. It doesn't feel like captivity. It feels like normal life. Here's something researchers discovered that I think about a lot. Financial stress physically reduces your cognitive capacity. Studies have found that the mental load of financial stress is equivalent to losing around 13 IQ points. That's similar to pulling an all-nighter. So the person lying awake at 2 a.m. doing the math in their head, if I pay this bill, can I cover that one? And what if the car needs work? That person is also, at that exact moment, the least mentally equipped they will ever be to solve that problem. The stress makes you worse at solving the thing causing the stress. It's a loop. And it's not an accident that the system works this way. Credit card companies earn more when you carry a balance. Banks earn more when your mortgage stretches your budget. Car dealerships earn more when you finance for 72 months instead of 48. Your financial pressure is their revenue model. That's not cynicism. That's just understanding whose interests are actually at stake when someone tells you you're approved. So let's flip this. What does the other side actually feel like? The honest answer is it's quieter than you expect. People who get there describe the initial feeling as euphoric, and then it fades. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Your brain recalibrates, and the extraordinary becomes ordinary surprisingly fast. But what doesn't fade, and this is the part that matters, is the absence of dread. That background noise in your head, that constant low-level calculation running in the corner of your mind, the voice that says, can I afford this? Should I be worried? What if something happens? That voice goes quiet, and you don't realize how loud it was until it stops. The day-to-day changes are surprisingly mundane in the best possible way. A tire blows out. You get it fixed. You're mildly annoyed. That's it. The spiral doesn't start. You don't lie awake that night replaying every financial decision you've made since 2021. Your employer asks you to do something unreasonable. When you have 6 months of expenses and savings, you can say no. When you have 3 years' worth invested, you can walk away entirely if you need to. The fear that kept you silent, that's gone. But here's what most financial content doesn't tell you. 2 things consistently catch people off guard when they get there, and neither of them are math problems. The first is identity. Imagine someone, let's call him Kamran, spent 19 years in corporate project management, hit his number at 52, retired with a solid portfolio, a clear withdrawal strategy, the math all worked out perfectly. For the first few months, he did everything he imagined, slept in, traveled, finally read books. By month 4, he was checking his portfolio every day. By month 7, he took on a part-time consulting contract just to stay sharp. By month 10, he was working 25 hours a week and not entirely sure why. Kamran didn't fail to reach financial independence. He reached it and discovered that the freedom he'd built was a room he didn't know how to live in. The work wasn't just paying the bills, it was providing structure, community, identity, purpose. When the financial pressure to work disappears, you find out very quickly whether you had a life outside of it.
The second is what's called deaccumulation anxiety, which is the clinical way of saying people who build wealth often can't bring themselves to spend it. Studies consistently show that a large percentage of retirees describe spending as anxiety-inducing, even when the math says they're completely fine. You spend decades conditioning yourself to save, and that conditioning doesn't just turn off. Watching a balance go down for the first time feels deeply wrong, even when it's exactly what it's supposed to do. Knowing these things won't make them not happen to you, but it means you can build a life alongside the money, not just a portfolio. Okay, let's talk numbers, because this is where most people have it completely wrong. Your freedom number is calculable. It's not a mystery. It comes from something called the 4% rule. A researcher named William Bengen backtested every 30-year retirement period going back nearly a century. He found that a portfolio invested primarily in broad market equities could sustain a 4% annual withdrawal adjusted for inflation and survive roughly 95% of those historical periods. The math is clean. Multiply your annual spending by 25. That's your number. Spending $36,000 a year, you need $900,000. Spending $50,000, you need $1.25 million. Spending $80,000, you need $2 million. This isn't a rap video budget, but it means money is no longer making your decisions for you, which is actually the point. Now here's what most people get completely backwards. The single most important variable in how fast you reach that number is not your income, it's your savings rate. At a 10% savings rate, which is where most people feel responsible and move on, you are 51 years from financial independence. If you start at 25, you're done at 76. Bump to 20%, 37 years out. Respectable, but still a long game. Get to 30%, you're down to 28 years. Hit 50%, spend half, invest half, and you're 17 years from never having to work again. Get to 65% savings, you're looking at about 9 years. And here's the insight that changes everything. Cutting your spending does two things at the same time. It increases your savings rate, which speeds up the timeline, and it reduces your freedom number because a lower-cost lifestyle requires a smaller portfolio to sustain. Someone earning $80,000 and spending $40,000 is in a dramatically better position than someone earning $200,000 and spending $190,000. Same years of working, completely different outcome. There's also something called coast fire, the point at which you've invested enough that compound growth alone, even without another single contribution, will carry you to your full freedom number by traditional retirement age. A 32-year-old with $280,000 invested today at a 7% real return will have approximately $1.3 million by age 62 without saving another cent. The retirement problem is mathematically solved. They can take a lower-paying job, switch careers, work part-time, do something they actually want to do. The pressure releases before full financial independence. That's a game changer for most people. Now let me tell you about compound growth, because this is where the math becomes genuinely strange. Charlie Munger once said that the first 100,000 is a beast. He used a stronger word, but the point stands. Because here's what happens when you model it out. Invest $10,000 a year at 7% returns. Your first 100,000 takes roughly 8 years, and 85% of it is money you personally put in. Your investments barely contributed. But at 1 million, your portfolio is generating $70,000 a year on its own without you doing anything, more than the median salary in most countries, just sitting there, compounding while you sleep. The second 100,000 after the first comes faster, the third faster still. The math is relentless. It doesn't care about your motivation levels. It just compounds. Ronald Reed was a janitor in Vermont and a gas station attendant before that. He drove an old car, lived in the same modest house for decades. When he died in 2014 at age 92, his estate was worth $8 million, built entirely through consistent index fund investing over decades. Never did anything clever, never tried to time the market, just kept doing the simple thing and never stopped. The people around him had no idea. Real wealth is invisible from the outside. We've confused the costume for the person wearing it, and that confusion costs people who are actually doing fine enormous social pressure to upgrade into a worse financial position. Here's something the financial independence world doesn't advertise loudly. A significant number of people who hit their number don't stop. They hit 1 million and think 1.3 million would feel safer. They hit 1.3 million and the goalpost moves to 1.6. This is called one more year syndrome, and it's real. The mindset that builds the portfolio doesn't automatically hand the controls over to the person who gets to actually live. The way out is to stop treating financial independence as a finish line and start treating it as a gate that unlocks choices. Financial freedom isn't about retiring from your life. It's about making the next chapter deliberate instead of accidental. The work doesn't disappear, the coercion does. Most people who reach it continue working, but differently. They consult instead of being employed. They pursue projects that actually interest them. They say no to the obligations they always said yes to out of fear.
The goal isn't to stop. The goal is to choose. All right, let's bring this down to earth. None of what I've described matters without a real road to it. Step 1, build a buffer. Start with $1,000 in a high-yield savings account, not investing, just emergency insulation. Then grow it to 3 to 6 months of actual living expenses. This isn't exciting, but right now, the majority of people cannot absorb a $1,000 surprise expense without going into debt. That buffer completely changes how you make decisions because you stop making them from scarcity. Step 2, kill high-interest debt. Credit card APRs are averaging around 22% right now. There is no investment strategy that reliably beats a guaranteed 22% return from paying off a card. This isn't exciting advice, it's just correct. Attack that first. Step 3, automate your investing. Broad market index funds through tax-advantaged accounts, not individual stocks, not whatever's trending on social media this week. The market has returned roughly 10% annually, nominally, going back nearly a century. Funds that track it give you that return at near zero cost. Max your registered accounts, automate it on payday, and then, this is important, leave it alone when the market drops, because it will drop, and that's when most people panic and make their worst decisions. Step 4, capture every income increase. Every raise, every bonus, every side income. If it goes straight to your lifestyle, a nicer place, a newer car, your savings rate stays the same, your timeline stays the same, and you just have a more expensive version of the same problem. New income that gets invested does double duty. It adds to the portfolio and keeps the freedom number low. Step 5, build a life you actually want at your current spending level. This is the most underrated step. The people who get to financial freedom fastest almost universally report that the things that matter most to them, time with people they love, meaningful work, physical health, cost far less than they assumed. The goal isn't to deprive yourself for decades, it's to figure out what actually makes your life feel good and stop spending money on the things that don't. The Rahib's $137,000 combined income, barely $1,200 left at the end of every month, one unexpected bill away from a credit card. They're not a cautionary tale. They are the predictable result of a system designed to keep people spending just slightly more than they earn, borrowing to fill the gap, and working to service the debt. It works because most people never run the actual numbers, and the institutions involved have a very strong financial interest in making sure they don't. The math, though, the math is available to almost everyone. A savings rate, a freedom number, compound growth that doesn't need your help, it just needs your patience. The first 100,000, which is hard, the second, which is difficult but faster, everything after that, which mostly just requires leaving it alone. The question is whether you're willing to run the numbers honestly, with real figures from your actual life, not the version that feels comfortable. If this video made something click for you, if you're sitting there thinking, I want to actually figure out my number, I want to stop winging this, then let's keep going. Hit subscribe because next week we're going deep on how to actually calculate your own freedom number, step by step with real math. Drop a comment below. Where are you right now on this journey? Just starting out? Already building? Trying to figure out if Coast Fire applies to you? Let me know. I read everything. See you in next video.